You're listening to episode 4 of the Fighting Farmer podcast, and it's a chilly one here in the holler. Hey folks, this is Spence. Hope everybody's doing good. Mike, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing well. Thanks, Spence. How are you doing down there in the holler?
It's chilly. That cold front pushed through a couple days ago, and it was 12 degrees this morning. And yesterday didn't get above freezing. And then I imagine up north, you guys are pretty cold too.
Yeah, we're not quite there yet, actually, but we're going to get there. It is one of those things. Winter comes and it gets cold. Is 12 cold for you? Is that unusual?
Yeah, for Arkansas, definitely. Like we should be right around the freezing mark and at night. So having temperatures 12 degrees is pretty ridiculous for us. Occasionally, like 4 years ago, there was a freak snowstorm that dumped 6 inches. Almost exactly 4 years ago. So it's happened before, and we're a little adventurous when it comes to pushing poultry production into December, and a little bit more adventurous now that I have a processing plant that I need to make equipment payments on. And the only way you get that is if you slaughter birds. So we're pushing it all the way to Christmas this year, and we kind of got caught. We were playing at the craps table and dice, we rolled snake eyes. So I've never actually played craps, but I think rolling snake eyes is bad. So it was like super warm, I think last week. And it's going to happen, right? When it's like 70 degrees in December, 75, there's going to be a cold front rolling. And I guess it's swept down, knocked our temps down and went through the East Coast. And out west, they're burning down. In Texas, they had snow. We got family down by New Braunfels and Carla's sister. And so we got texts of cousins in snow. And y'all getting snow up that way? Or
No, we had flurries yesterday, I think it was, and that's about it. So to my knowledge, we don't have any snow in the forecast, but it's weird up here in Pennsylvania. I'm kind of north central Pennsylvania. So I've processed turkeys in the snow and ice before, but it's also been like 70 degrees at Thanksgiving. So, we're kind of in that in-between zone.
Yeah, I think we're probably pretty close, it sounds like. But yeah, we just get tail ends of stuff, or these Arctic lows will drop or highs will drop down. And the big thing is it dries everything out. So we get a lot of fires around this time of year. So the chickens actually did pretty good. And with that amount of cold, we've been through it enough to where we know kind of what to do, what we can do, and we do it as best as we can. And it's just one of the reasons why you don't raise chickens out in winter. And we've talked about that before. We did our first farmers market indoors over there in Fayetteville at Ozark Natural Foods, and that turned out really well. It is so much easier than doing it on Saturday on the square, because essentially Ozark Natural Foods is this big kind of natural foods cooperative grocery store, right? Mm-hmm. And they bought a building next to them. There's some building space, office space, and they put in a little like pet food feed store, but there's a whole bunch, like a little warehouse behind it. So they've opened that up to the farmers market in Fayetteville, to the association. So in winter we're able to do it in there, and it's you're not, if it's cold, it's not really heated back there, but it's dry. It's out of the wind. It's inside in a building. So it's really nice, and things on the square can be really hectic for our customers. I've got this little old lady that drives in from near Mountain Home, Arkansas to get chicken every once in a while. And she tried one time on the square and got lost. And she called me. She's like, I still haven't recovered from the trauma of the square. And I think she was serious. And I was like, You would have enjoyed Iraq. So having the market in there is really good for a lot of our customers, especially our older customers. And they got all kinds of neat stuff right before Christmas. And it's awesome to be able to buy fresh greens just from some of our friends, and do the typical farmers market horse trading for us, where we trade out chicken for greens. So if you're around, it's from 9 to 1. And tomorrow, it is December 8th. So tomorrow will be December 9th. We actually, I'm coaching basketball, and we have a double header tomorrow, and Carla really wants to come see it. Normally she works the farmer's market while I coach.
Right.
So this is the first time we will sell at a farmer's market in neither I nor Carla will be there. So we've got a couple of ladies, one, the lovely Miss Hannah Howard from Trinidad, and a girl, Miss Wall from our church. Hannah is going to sell, and we're going to see how that goes, which will be great for our family. The great thing about this market is I leave my freezers and stuff there, so I just have to bring the meat. So I'll load it in the delivery van, all frozen, and get everything set up beforehand, and then they just leave when they're done at 1 if we're not there yet. So works out great.
So are they familiar with all your stuff then? Or obviously somewhat, you're going to entrust them with your market stand, but
yeah.
Did you go through any training with them?
No. I know like they eat our stuff. They both work at the school at our church, the community. We have a school called Prism Education Center, and Rachel is the administrator there, and Hannah's a very beloved teacher, and so we donate quite a bit of chicken to Prism. That's who I've been doing the coaching for my son's team there, and so they've been around the farm since the farm got started. So they know
cool.
They know just because they're like family. So it'll be neat to see how that works out, and we have such loyal customers that and it's such an easy thing. We've got like a nice banner that shows the chickens, and at some point bacon sells itself, right?
Especially bacon.
Yeah. I looked at Carla and I was like, well, we're looking to hire 1, but I think having 2 people there will be easier on them because we can get some pretty long lines.
Right.
And Carla and I were talking about it. I was like, well, is it worth this much money, what we're paying them? Is that worth it? So you can see the kids play. And she's like, yes. So, that kind of answered that. And, that quality of life, man, it's really tough in farming, that balance. So that's something we've been working on and that. So, but yeah, so we've also, our ducks are a couple of weeks away. We're going to have those at market too before Christmas, not Thanksgiving. And we'll have them there to sell. And then we'll also be selling them at Ozark Natural Foods if you want a fresh duck. So it's kind of coming to the end for the chickens. Well, we got 2 more slaughters, so it'll be a nice break.
The off season, at least for chickens.
Yeah, off-ish, right? But yeah, hey, December 19th, we've got a Ask APA coming up, right?
That's correct. It's 8 p.m. Eastern to 9 p.m. Eastern, so it's 1 hour time slot. And anybody can call in, ask a chicken question, and details, the call information is always on appa.org, appa.org.
Awesome. Do you know who's going to be doing it?
Ask APA on the 19th will be Craig Haney at Carversville Farm, and then David Hale out there in Wendy's Meadows Farm in Texas.
All right. We've also got the conference coming in January. I think we've got, I was talking with some folks out in Oklahoma that had some questions about expanding egg production and wholesale accounts. And I was able to tell them, hey, why don't you ask the very large scale pasture raised egg producers that are coming to the conference? That's who you should be asking, not Spence.
I think I was telling you before we started recording, Spence, I sent out an announcement for the conference, and I got this email back from somebody who said, I'm looking, I do a couple hundred a month. I'm looking to go to like X, like a very large number, like a couple thousand a month or a week, I'm sorry, and wanted to know kind of if I could put them in touch with people. And I'm like, well, I could. And if you just show up here in Arkansas, register first and then show up, you'll have access to some of the biggest people in our community and people who are solving this exact problem of, moving birds, large amounts of birds on pasture. He hasn't registered yet, so I'm going to have to follow up with him and keep badgering him a little.
Yeah. Yeah, no joke, huh? But yeah, it's like, there's 2 reasons for that, right? Like one of them is when you call someone, so people get frustrated because I know sometimes they can't get a hold of me. And I'm like, I got a lot going on, right?
Right.
So the nice thing about conferences is that I have allocated time to talk, to hang out, to visit with folks, to ask questions and answer questions. And, so that's one of the great things about these conferences is that people are ready to talk, when you're, and I think sometimes people don't understand how disruptive it can be when you get beginning farmers that are like, all I need is 30 minutes. Well, that 30 minutes may be the only time that guy has to like rest for like that week, and
Right.
you try to give back and be as generous as you can with your time. But, and if you have 15, 20 people a week reaching out to you, it can get exhausting and you can't do a good job of it. So I think it's really good if you're trying to ask people questions or that kind of stuff to learn from people that are doing things. One, you got to realize, man, you're asking for free knowledge, which has cost them a lot of money to know.
Yeah, that's right.
And learn. And so like whenever you can get into a designated time to engage in that, I think it's really respectful. So in your guys' case, I would be like, dude, don't be calling me up on the phone. Just come to this. If you're serious, invest in the time to drive, and then I'll give you as much time as you need,
Yeah.
And I feel like that would be true for most of the producers, So.
Here's the way to think about that, Spence. That's such a great point. And, the things that I do throughout the years, the same thing has happened. You spend a lot of time talking to people after hours, chewing in family time. And sometimes it leads to a sale. Sometimes it doesn't, but eventually you realize, man, that may not all be worth it. So you set some boundaries, but, business consultants regularly work for, do consultation calls for $100, $200, $300 an hour if they're really good. And if you're a non-member of APA and we're asking you to pay $150, I think is the registration rate, and you're going to be there for 2 full days. I mean, access to people who have the knowledge or have the experience that you need. And, part of it's skill, right? It's some networking and some communication skills. You just can't go pump everybody for all their knowledge. You build relationships and the good things will come. But having access to that is invaluable in my opinion. And it's worth, the several $100, maybe $1,000 in total that you would spend to get there. You just got to take advantage of it and view it as a investment in your business.
Yeah. And, a perfect example would be last year we did a conference for APA. It was the first one, kind of a pilot, and we had not opened up the processing plant yet. And so, but we were looking at it. It's kind of just like, there's no way we can get this off the ground, is there? And we're kicking around several things. And, I went to the conference and I went and saw Grady's processing facility in Hillsboro, Texas, and Greg Gunthorpe was there. And instead of trying to cold call these guys up, I was able to build a relationship. And I knew these guys from the listserv and that, but, I was really able to like spend some time and look. And, Grady was very generous in hosting the site, the conference at his place on his farm. And so like there was designated time and I just got so much information. And then later I could call and ask questions about certain things. And I think that's the way to do it, and I've been paid, $150 an hour to consult on things, which I think is a great way to approach me. And you get a lot more of my time and I answer your emails back, It's just something, if you're in the role of the beginning farmer, it's something to think about and be understanding of that. And if you succeed, you'll understand that at some point. So
right.
The big takeaway is just come to the conference and come hang out with us at the conference.
Just come, man. Just come.
Stop calling Mike. Just sign up. But yeah, man, speaking of, not speaking of anything, just kind of moving along. We had our biggest kill at the processing plant this week. We killed 900 chickens, which that's a lot for us. I don't know if that's a lot for you, but 900 broilers is quite a few. So for Greg Gunthorpe or some of the bigger plants, it's not that big, but so we got started around 8:30, 8:45. And then, by the time we did all of our pre-op and the feds said, hey, go ahead. You gave us the green light. Then we finished up around, it was pushing 4, a little after 4. So, we had to give lunch breaks and that. So,
yep.
But, Angela, who I mentioned earlier, she came and she brought 400 of those and, I think around 400 if I remember correctly. And she stayed the entire time and helped us on the processing line, which is a great way to make sure your birds are always processed whenever you're willing to stay all day and process. So that, everybody was kind of impressed with her hopping on the line and cleaning chickens. So I feel like I talked to her and I felt like she learns a lot doing that, like she got to see her own birds and what we see in her birds. And we were able to talk about certain things and things I noticed, things the inspector noticed, and just makes for a better product when you can get the full feedback on your bird,
Right.
When you can actually examine it in your hand process. And so we did that, that was a big deal. It was funny because Carla was out of town, and it's kind of a rough week. Carla was out of town on a business trip for a job because, we need insurance because my boys seem to be really good at breaking bones, falling out of trees, swinging one-handed out of a limb over a pile of rocks with a toilet brush you found somewhere in the woods, and then the limb breaks or something, and you break your arm. So anyways, so Carla was out. She actually got delayed. So she was out for almost the entire week. Sunday night when we catch up, we went to church and we packed bags for all three of my kids, and we sent them to 3 different families who, so they could get them ready for school and drop them off at school in the morning because I'd be at the processing plant. And Carla got delayed, and then we had this big temperature freeze and just all kinds of wow, it was a lot, not that much sleep. And it was really frustrating for her because she was kind of stuck out on the East Coast, not really doing anything and for a day or so. And it just, I don't know, I think sometimes we've had folks describe our life as like, oh, it's you live such a fairy tale. And, when 4:00 at the processing plant on Monday, and tired from catching up and then tired from recreating and killing and throwing in the scalder and all that and covered in blood and not blood,
yeah,
from the birds and, all over, my face and stuff.
The other fluid,
the other fluid,
semi-fluid, solid. Yeah.
Yeah. And, and then I ran out of there and flew back home, down the interstate, hoping not to get a ticket. Hopped in the shower, scrubbed vigorously to get everything off, ran out, hopped in the truck, picked up 4 kids to take to basketball practice and coach the kids, so because I had basketball practice at 6, a 30-minute drive away, and it's pretty intense,
Wow.
And, but the culmination, so it was kind of like this week, I was expecting the cherry on the on the crap sandwich that was this week, to be, we were playing this really, really good team in our kids basketball league. And, we're very consumed with 4th grade basketball now.
Right.
So we had I was kind of thinking it would be our first loss. And, this is our 3rd year coaching this team with this group of boys and kind of started off with them. And, we've been through it all to where it's like, I don't think we're going to win a game this season. And then last year, I think we had 2 wins, and we're 4-0 now. And the boys are doing really good passing, and the farm, we sponsor some of the kids to go to camps, if they're a little economically challenged. And so we've got a lot invested emotionally and, with the farm and these kids and all that jazz. So, but I was expecting, all right, this is going to be the good where the boys experience a loss and, we have to deal with crying or, or the disappointment. And man, it was a slobber knocker of a game in a positive way. And we actually, my men's group for the church that we go to was supposed to meet last night about the same time. And me and the guy I coach with, he's like my assistant coach. We're both go to that church and we couldn't be there. So all the guys came to watch the boys, because my son, his son, some of the other boys from our church are there, and then a bunch of other kids. And so it was 7:40 start time on a Thursday night, and we had bleachers packed with adult men and guys in college and stuff. And so, I mean, there were buzzer beater, fadeaway jump shots, layups, finger rolls, and so it was actually really good, intense, because this league we play in is super good. And so we ended up winning, 40-35, and every kid on our team scored, including we have one kid that just started. He's kind of he's not super athletic, and he's really intimidated, and he's a little undersized, but we play for everybody to play. That's one of our values. We don't have the superstars. And so it was awesome to watch some of our best players, pass up an iffy shot to like dump the ball to this kid, and he got his first points, because he was wide open.
Cool.
So yeah, so that was a nice end to the farm, because yesterday we couldn't thaw out water, and it was just really frustrating. You can't move the birds because they're so cold. It's just farming chickens out on pasture when it's below freezing, when it doesn't get into where water thaws, is not pleasant, because you can't even haul water to them, because if you put down water, a chicken that's without food or water for like 30 seconds and it just freaks out, right?
Right.
Like they pile on each other and they're scared somebody's going to get something that they don't have. And so if we would have put any type of like rubber tub or something, all those chickens would have piled into it and gotten soaked, and then it would have been worse,
Right.
So we drained all the water lines Wednesday, and we didn't get them going till today. And we were about to run out there and shut them off again. They've been on for about, I think, 3 hours, the water, because it's going to freeze. It's only it's 38 is what it topped out to today. So,
wow.
But, but it's supposed to get mild. But, it's just kind of one of those things where it's like, what do I do? If I do this, it's not going to work. And if I do that, and I had a bunch of deliveries Thursday and had to drop kids off. And it's just kind of, and I was really stressed out about it. Like, and ultimately I remembered, I'm like, hey, God, if you want this thing to work, you got to keep the chickens alive, because there's nothing I can do at this point. Which I feel like every farmer multiple times a year has that experience where they're like, you know what, I'm completely helpless right now.
Right.
I'm at the mercy of the nature. And so if it's going to work, it's going to work, and they're not fun, but that's what farming is.
Fairy tales, right? You just described it.
Yeah. Right. So
looking for the glass slipper. You think we found it in a frozen water tank.
Yeah. Can't get it out. So it's interesting, and we're getting there and just kind of working through it. And every time we go through one of these cold snaps, we figure out things to do better. Like I ordered from Grady and down in Cobb Creek, I ordered one of the big hoop houses, the 40 by 20s. And this one's kind of set up more for winter production. So it's got greenhouse plastic that goes up around it, and then it's got a vent on it. I'm not quite sure, but it's kind of Gothic. So it's got kind of a cone, not cone, but it's got like a A-frame on top roof. And then at the top, there's a vent, because one of the things, if you have a bunch of chickens or even just grass in a hoop house or vegetables, when it heats up, the expiration from the moisture will condense, and then it'll actually like rain on them, because it hits the plastic, which is cold on the other side, and the water vapor condenses and essentially rains. So if you have like a vent, it helps air that out, and it also keeps wide temperature swings, So we got one of those ordered from Grady, and I'm curious to try it out for spring production. When we get birds in early March, because you'll have these cold days, but they'll be sunny, and I think it'll make a huge difference in the quality of life for the birds at the start of the season and the end.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you about that when you were talking about the cold. Like I knew Grady's range coops had the greenhouse plastic on it to help. So I would have thought you would have heated up a little bit, and there would have been a point in the day when it did. But I guess the one you have now doesn't have greenhouse plastic on. Is that
right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it does have like the sides roll down. And so like on the north side, we drop that all the way down to kind of block some of the wind. And then on the south side, the light comes through, and sunlight, it's warming. So the birds you'll see them, they'll kind of nestle up in the sun.
Right.
And they're able to huddle pretty good, like just the body heat from that many birds. You'll stick your hand in there and it'll be like 90 degrees,
right.
And they got feathers on the top, and it's fairly dry. So outside, so they're not like, if it's really wet, they can lose a lot of body heat through the ground. The thing is you get manure buildup, that's not pleasant
Mm-hmm.
to
Right.
sit on. So, and we've been meaning to spread straw, but just haven't been able to with schedules. So we did so that 2 day cold snap where it didn't get above freezing was down to 12 this morning. We only lost 5 birds out of 900. So that's pretty good. And the ones that died were runts. They died because of ascites, which is anytime you deal with chickens in cold, broiler chickens, the white Cornish cross birds, which is pretty much if you eat chicken, that's what you're eating. And, the ascites is what gets them. I like talking about just a different chicken topic, and I figure, man, you can't get a better thing than ascites at this time of year. And so I thought we'd talk about ascites. It's kind of more of a syndrome, or it's like a complex of that. There's a lot of different factors that affect it. But one of the things you see in processing, which I'm sure, you used to run a mobile processing unit, so I'm sure you used to see it, was water belly, where you'd have you'd cut a chicken open and it'd be filled with like a yellowish fluid,
Oh yeah.
and you'd have to throw that bird away.
Yep.
So it's really common, and you see it really in the spring and you see it in the winter, and I feel like you see it more typically heavy in the spring because because of it's a metabolic disease, and it can be caused by a lot of different things. In pastured poultry, where typically the thing that causes it is cold. In the poultry industry, a lot of times you see it like the confinement industry, fixed chicken houses, where you throw them out in there and raise them all without moving them. A lot of times you get air sacculitis and that, but you can have some influence from just ammonia, and you'll get that's more air sacculitis. But so temperature tends to be, it's like one of the strongest causes. And what it is, it's kind of a metabolic, I don't know if you call it disease or syndrome, but the broiler chickens, we've been eating chickens for like 4,000 years, right? And they start off in the jungles of Southeast Asia. So, the genetics evolved in a low altitude, hot, humid place. And chickens have spread across the world with people. And so the meat birds that we've raised, we've bred them to grow really fast, right? Because we want to feed to the chicken, we want it to grow, and we want it to do as best as possible with that. Which, sometimes I think people are like, "Oh, it should slow down," but I mean, you want chicken tastes pretty good when it's tender and not tough as shoe leather, and
Right.
and doesn't cost $50 a pound. So we want it to grow efficiently and in that, and so the white bird that you see, the Cornish cross, we've been developing that for like 60 years. I think people they started breeding that in like 30s, 40s, so maybe more than 60 years. And so as it's growing, those birds, they're eating a lot of feed. They've got a real high metabolism. They're really cranking. Well, when they get exposed to really sudden temperature changes, like cold temps, there's something that trips in them metabolism, like it kind of kicks it into overdrive, and that's like if you're out in the cold, working in the cold, you eat a lot of food, right, to stay warm, and your body needs a lot of food to burn for heat. And so that can happen with and this is my understanding of ascites. I'm sure I don't have it completely right, but essentially there's like a little switch back there in that chicken's metabolism that gets turned on, and then when that bird's exposed to cold, and then it may not get turned off. And so, as the bird, their heart beats faster, you got all this other stuff going on, their body's working harder, and essentially there's all these liver enzymes and that, and you can get like this deterioration of the liver, like the liver just gets overworked, and you start retaining fluid, and then that fluid in the body cavity expands, and then it pushes on the heart, or you get fluid buildup around the heart sac. There's the pericardium, which
Right.
is around the heart. It's a sac around the heart. So then that heart has to beat harder, and it can't, and so, one of the things on pasture, what you'll see is that the bird will kind of start turning like purplish. They call it cyanogenic, or cyanic, which is just kind of bluish purple. And they'll actually make a sound like because they're not able to really suck in air, and you typically in the industry, it used to just be a high altitude problem. So if you're raising chickens in like Colorado, you had to do some things. And it's just now it's more because the birds grow so fast, it's tied to like oxygen demand, which is why altitude kind of does it. And, as their metabolism's going more, just like if you're playing running or playing a sports, playing sports, then, like it's really easy to start running out of oxygen. One of the reasons I see it in chicken houses is in the cold snaps, the growers will propane, if you grow for XYZ poultry company in your chicken house, you have propane costs that are huge in the winter, and that comes directly out of your pocket. The company you grow for, they don't pay for that. So there's a temptation to shut down ventilation, so you're not blowing all that expensive hot air out, and then you get a ton of ammonia buildup, and then that displaces the oxygen in the room, and then that can also kick off ascites, and then they'll get a whole bunch of condemns on that end, trying to save money on the your propane bill, and then it raises up in the conventional industry. Your condemn rate rises up, and you get in trouble. So there's all kinds of stuff, and you'll see it a lot of times. The birds, you'll find them on their back because they'll have a heart attack, or you get that water belly, and they'll get condemned during slaughter. There's a couple different ways to take care of that, and one of them is feed. So if you slow them down, so if you're in the spring, a lot of people will start their chicks on a 21% starter ration and then switch over to like a broiler finisher or grower after 2 or 3 weeks. We run a 19% straight through and ration for the birds and 19% protein. And what that does, it kind of slows them down a little, as opposed to really pouring the gas on and hammering it from day one. It gives them time to build all their organs and that kind of stuff before they start really hitting that growth spurt with meat. And that slows them down, it slows the metabolism down. And then the big thing is in the brooder, especially when they're young, don't let them get exposed to cold, for a new producer, typically they use like heat lamps or something, and then the power goes out or the heat lamp blows, and then you find your birds huddled up in a corner in the morning,
Yeah.
So those birds, they're kind of set up for it. Now going into spring, once spring turns, it's not as bad because it warms up and the birds can kind of get through it. If you can heat them back up to 80 degrees, 70 degrees, a lot of times it kind of resets that metabolism. There's a couple things you can do in that way. And I've had success just pulling feed and water from my birds with ascites and kind of putting them on a diet, so to speak, to slow down that metabolism. And then everything, if it's a mild case, if you can catch it occurring, they'll be fine. But, and on pasture, we actually have kind of an advantage. It's not as bad because naturally we have nighttime, in a chicken house, they may run the lights on all night, and so the birds can see the feed, get up and walk over and eat feed. Well, we have this thing called night out on pasture. And so that's just a natural time to rest the bird's metabolism. And so it kind of slows down growth as well. So, and then, also your breed. So some of the older Cornish cross breeds, which are getting harder to find, and I always get these numbers, like your Ross 308s, maybe a Cobb 300. Those are different models of Cornish cross. The lower the number on the broiler, whatever type of Cornish cross it is, the better they seem to do because they don't grow as fast, because they're a little bit older stock. So, but yeah, it's just one of those things this time of year, ascites and cold weather. And so you just got to manage it just like everything else in chickens, right?
One of the most common problems we see right there is ascites in the spring, like you said, primarily in the spring, and then secondary in the fall when the extremes of the season, like you're doing down there in Arkansas right now, pushing your luck.
Yeah, pushing the luck. So, but man, the ducks, the ducks don't care.
No.
It's crazy, man. They're just like, man. Like, David was moving chickens today, and he's like, man, the broilers just didn't want to move because it was cold. But the ducks, as soon as you walk over there, they were peeping and quacking at them because they wanted that grass, you know. They wanted it to be moved to get the fresh grass. So they were all at the front of the pen wagging their tails. So it's just like the ducks we really enjoy the ducks. Just they're kind of funny birds, but they also work well in pastured systems, you know.
Yeah,
man. I think that's about it. Gearing up for last 2 weeks and things kind of slowing down. We'll go into take a little break over Christmas and just kind of run into starting to do some fencing projects. I'm starting to look though I think we're going to, like, taxes this time of year is always a concern, right? Because in farming, if you have, and I guess it's every business, but if you did well and made money, the government wants to take like a third of it.
Right.
And you work so stinking hard. So, like, I don't want to see, you know, it's this weird game, cat and mouse game you got to play because, you know, if I don't cash my checks till January 1st, you know, it kind of artificially deflates our income. And because, you know, anything over any income gets nailed, you get nailed for. And it kind of really stinks because you hear about like Apple and these other companies that are like, yeah, all of our stuff, we just ship it over to Ireland and pay 0% tax. And
yeah,
you're like, I think 2 years ago we paid in, and that feeling when I left the accountants that across the creek farm paid more in taxes than like Apple or GE, like General Electric, that the feeling that I had contributed more to tax income for the nation was a really depressing one to me. you know, so it's like every year we're going to try to post a negative deficit, you know, legally, of course, but so
right,
so we're going to be ordering like peat moss, and
we're not tax accountants on this show, by the way.
yeah. So anything I say, take it with a grain of salt. But I do have some good accountants, so that's good. But yeah, so we'll be ordering anything I can front end. So I'm starting to kind of get a list. We got to build some buildings, so I may buy all the material. Like I got to buy a bunch of field fence.
Cool, man. I guess we'll do it again next week.
All right. Thanks, Mike.
Hey,
have a good one.
Thanks,
Stay warm.
Spence.
Well, I fought for the 188. I packed my bags to meet my fate. And off I went to pay my rent. I've been a patriot since I was 8. So there I was with the old fighter wing, fighting the war no one could see, with 8,000 pounds of bombs and rounds. We'll load it all up as we all sing. Hey ho, here we go, load 'em up and watch 'em go. Hey ho, here we go, load 'em up and watch 'em go. After 12 long months of war, I got home to do my chores, but instead I laid in bed. I could see that A10 sore. Hey ho, here we go, load 'em up and watch 'em go. Hey ho, here we go, load 'em up and watch 'em go. Well, I went to the bar every night, tried to drink away all my pain and fright, but what could I do when the drinking was through but dream about the war every night? Hey ho, here we go, load 'em up and watch 'em go. Hey ho, here we go, load 'em up and watch 'em go. Invisible wars too much for me. What we need is a conversation, you see, but it'll have to wait 'cause I got a date. Uncle Sam needs 12 more for me. Hey ho, here we go, load 'em up and watch 'em go. Hey ho, here we go, load 'em up and watch 'em go. Hey ho, here we go, load 'em up and watch 'em go. I said, hey ho, here we go, where they all go, nobody knows.